All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. We are at the top of the hour. My name is Carson McPherson-Krutsky, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute, who is hosting this series this year. I'm really excited to have you all here for our kickoff event, which is focused on the Resource Nexus for Sustainability Grand Challenge, building collaborations between Boise State and community partners to address societal problems. And this panel is really going to be the one that provides the context and framing for the rest of the panels that we're going to be having this year. So we're so happy that you're all a part of it. Note there is live transcription happening, so if you need to turn that on, you can. The format of this panel, I'm going to give a quick introduction, and then we're going to have a bit of a presentation from Brittany Brand about what a grand challenge is, and then we'll go into more of a facilitated discussion for the remainder of the time, and then keep about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A from the audience. So if you have questions as we're going along, feel free to put those in the chat, and then we can get to them towards the latter part of the session. So before we jump into everything, I wanted to go over some of these overarching goals for the panels that we're going to be having each month with the HCRI. And so the goals of these panels are really to connect university researchers, connect community partners across disciplines and sectors, to learn more about what's going on in our community, what kinds of projects are happening, what organizations there are here that are all working on similar things, to find out how university researchers and students can support local efforts and information needs, and then importantly, to consider what actions we can all take as a community moving forward. A few definitions. So as the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute, we think about this term community resilience as the capacity of a community or region to adapt to change and thrive despite the chronic stresses, such as access to resources, climate change, etc., and acute shocks, such as flooding or wildfire that they may experience. So keep that definition in mind as we are talking about it. And then importantly, today and the rest of these sessions, we're going to be talking a lot about sustainability. And so I put an image here from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals they've put together. And then I just grabbed this quote from their website, which talks about sustainability meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, which I thought was a really nice way to think about it. And so I think these ideas of resilience and sustainability really go hand in hand. But they are different, and so I think it would be really interesting during the panels this year to talk through all of those differences and overlaps and how we can better understand that as we're moving forward and thinking about how to apply sustainability in terms of becoming resilient communities here in Idaho and beyond. So our three panelists that we have here today are Dr. Brittany Brand, who's the director and co-founder of the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute at Boise State. We also have Vanessa Fry, who's the interim director of the Idaho Policy Institute at Boise State. And we have Deborah LaSalle, who's the co-founder and environmental consultant for Warm Springs Consulting. So thank you, panelists, for all being here. I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Brittany, who's going to give you a bit of background on what a grand challenge is and what we started working on this year. So go ahead, Britt, and remember to unmute.
Great, thank you so much, Karsten. So I'm going to start with a video that our community engagement team recently put together that talks a little bit about what is this grand challenge. And here it goes.
The grand challenges at Boise State are intentionally transdisciplinary, they're societally relevant, they're ambitious, meaning that we're bringing teams together in new ways and solving problems or helping solve problems with our community partners.
The Resource Nexus for Sustainability Grand Challenge tackles the issues of resilience and sustainability. We will catalyze a nexus of scholars and practitioners to explore interactions between the built and natural environment through the lens of our disciplines and our stakeholders. Our goal is to build more resilient and sustainable urban and rural systems.
So sustainability is how we move forward equitably with the environment and the economy so we have prosperity for all.
To me, sustainability means integrating the economic, the environmental, and the social attributes of the future into a process or a approach that includes many different perspectives.
To me, sustainability is making the small and large changes to sort of make our daily lives more holistic and minimize our impact on the natural landscape.
It's living together in a way that lets us keep living together, and it's one of the most interesting and challenging and rich questions how to do that I'm aware of.
While sustainability efforts are numerous, much of the work still occurs in silos. We are exploring ways to better connect the outstanding work of our current research groups while establishing the time and space for all of those who wish to engage. We are also investigating how to support multidisciplinary community-engaged research efforts financially and through policies that promote and reward these efforts. Our ultimate goal is to increase the impact of our sustainability research with respect to both science and society.
I'm with Idaho Policy Institute in the School of Public Service, and in 2016, we were formed to be an objective research resource for Idaho's decision makers.
The Boise State Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute brings people together across disciplines and across sectors to build healthy, thriving, connected communities.
The School of the Environment is an administrative organizing tool for connecting faculty, students, and the public around environmental issues.
The Sustainability Governance Council is a group of stakeholders on campus. They work on really important sustainability projects across many disciplines that will help Boise State achieve their sustainability goals.
I've done the Housing Opportunities for All VIP course with Drs. Krista Paulson and Vanessa Fry, and that was 4 semesters of sort of looking into the housing problems that Boise and the Treasure Valley is facing.
Assuming that this effort's successful, our resource Nexus for Sustainability is successful, that means when a community partner has an issue in regards to sustainability, they know where to go on campus.
And it would connect people across schools and programs and provide an easy resource for trying to understand some really big, complicated issues.
To come together, to work across disciplines, to understand each other's perspectives and experiences, and most importantly, be working with and for our communities to address our most pressing societal needs.
Becoming that clearinghouse, becoming that source would allow new people to join over time, and it would also allow us to engage students in the public more readily than we've been able to before.
Right. So thank you to Rue, Film Professor Rue Wood and his students for putting that together. So the video itself did go through what is a Grand Challenge and a little bit of the background of what is the Resource Nexus for Sustainability Grand Challenge in particular. And I just wanted to note that Grand Challenges are not necessarily something that's unique to Boise State. There have been other universities around the nation who have implemented similar types of Grand Challenges, and just really recognizing that, you know, to be a Grand Challenge, it has to be really ambitious. It has to be fundamentally cross-disciplinary or multidisciplinary, and it must require that a connection between students and scholars at the university and practitioners in the community to really address collaboratively societal problems. So Boise State University has launched its own Grand Challenge series, and there are 4 Grand Challenges that are going to be released. The first one is the Resource Nexus for Sustainability, which is what you heard about a little bit today. So essentially, it's our goal. We're at the very beginning of this, and we've pulled together a group of faculty who are working to figure out how to build this out. But the ultimate goal is to build an ecosystem, a research ecosystem, where we can look at the work that's already happening on campus, recognize what research groups are already doing, and find ways to better connect and maybe de-silo those. So with any Grand Challenge, sustainability in particular is a really huge topic, right? There's no one person or research group or organization or company or even university that encompasses or covers all facets of sustainability because it is so broad. So the first question really is, what is Boise State good at? Like, where are our strengths with respect to sustainability research, resilience and sustainability research? And how do we really amplify those? How do we share those so that folks at the university know who is doing what with respect to this research, and also folks in the community know what Boise State strengths are and who they might tap into for future collaborative efforts. So ultimately, our goal in doing all of this is to be able to create a multidisciplinary research ecosystem with community engaged research, multidisciplinary and community engaged research, to find ways to build out more resilient and sustainable urban and rural systems. So the way we are doing this, and I guess back late last year, I think our proposal went into December, that the university asked faculty, this is our idea, how do you want to do this? And so they're allowing it to be a really ground up process. And so we put together a team, and we decided that the three things that we really need to do to get started are, first is an asset map. So what is the landscape at the university currently? Who is currently doing research under this umbrella of resilience and sustainability, and in what capacity? How well are they connected? Where might there be redundancies? Where might there be opportunities for stronger collaboration? And so the asset mapping team is really working to establish that landscape so that we really know what our strengths are, and also perhaps our areas of opportunity. The benchmarking team is looking at what other universities have done, because again, Boise State's not the first to try to build out a transdisciplinary research ecosystem. So there's a lot of great information out there. There's a lot of folks that have thought very hard about this and developed successful programs. And so we're reaching out to those partner universities, aspirational universities, and learning from them so that we can implement their best practices and lessons learned into what we're doing here at Boise State. And then finally, we have a community engagement team. And of course, this is also a critical component of this, is identifying the audiences to engage and the objectives and engaging those audiences. Like, what is the leadership of the university? How do they view sustainability, and how do they view the grand challenges, and what do they think what would their vision of success be? And the same thing for faculty, research staff, and students. And then also, very importantly, engaging our external community, which is, again, the point of these panels, is to really learn what's happening around Idaho with respect to resilience and sustainability efforts. Not only to learn from our community practitioners and what they're doing well, but also what they're struggling with, to open up opportunities for leveraging the expertise and resources of a university to assist in some of those societally relevant projects. So these are the three teams, and I will say that these are all very interconnected. And so we've developed this shared leadership model where we have a leadership team that is working within each of these teams as well. And each of these teams have a chair and a panel or a group of folks that are working toward each of the initiatives. And I just wanted to point out that we really tried to bring folks together across many different disciplines, colleges and schools. So we've got, again, Vanessa's here today from the Idaho Policy Institute. David represents engineering. Lance Davison is a community partner. He is the director for the Keystone Concept, and it brings a lot of leadership skills and a real knowledge of what's happening in the external community. We've got folks from the College of Arts and Sciences. We're collaborating with the Vice President for Research in their office. We've got Will and Ari from the Sustainability Governance Council on campus, Sarah from Public Health. We've got philosophy from Stephen, and human environment systems, environmental economics. We've got our film professor helping us find creative ways to communicate our story and what we're doing. Folks from the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute, and even university advancement involved in all of this. And so this is the team, and this is our shared leadership model. So our goal is to really tackle these objectives between now and the end of September into October a little bit. And then we're going to all come back together as a team and look at, basically do a SWOT analysis. So what are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And use that to identify areas where we might be able to create a model for success for building out this research ecosystem. And that model for success is what we're going to launch and test as part of phase 2. So phase 2 will start sometime around December or the turn of the new year. And this will include potential funding. So there may be a request for proposals that goes out to support this kind of effort. There may be looking at potential key hires that would support maybe data analysis across different research groups on campus. So it's not clear what that all is going to look like right now, because right now we're working on doing the background work to figure out what a model for success is going to be. We're also going to be looking at university procedures and policies and the nature of the silos to figure out, are there things that we might be able to change with respect to our infrastructure that would both promote and reward folks for engaging in this type of multidisciplinary work. So with that, the community engagement team has been working to put together the next panel series, which today launches. And these are some of the topics. So we asked you, our audience, what sustainability problems are you most interested to bring to the table and talk about? And from that, we are starting to put together a list for our panel series this year. This is one of the many ways that we're trying to engage with the community. So here's a list of some of the ones that are going to be coming up in the next few months. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the facilitator. Thank you.
Thanks, Britt. And I should also mention with these panels, one of the goals is really to bring in people outside of the university to be on these panels. And so today is a bit Boise State heavy. We do have two key representatives from Boise State, but a lot of the follow-up panels will be community members, community partners, and other folks who are thinking about these issues, similar to the panels we did last year as well. So, all right, well, thank you so much, Britt, for giving that overview. So now we're going to go into the facilitated questions part. But before we do that, I would love to just get some introductions and from Deb and Vanessa. So Vanessa, if you wouldn't mind going first and just tell us a little bit about yourself and the role that you have here at Boise State.
Definitely. Thanks, Carson, and great introduction to the whole Grand Challenge, Brittany. This is such an amazing team that I get to work with, and with Brittany leading the effort, it's just been such a pleasure to be able to work transdisciplinary with one of my colleagues. So I'm Vanessa Fry. I'm the interim director at Idaho Policy Institute, and I'm also associate research faculty in the School of Public Service. And Idaho Policy Institute, as I mentioned in the video, we were formed in 2016, just after the formation of the School of Public Service, in order to be an objective research resource for Idaho's decision makers. And so the then president of the university and the then dean of the School of Public Service really saw the need to be able to be really responsive to communities' needs. And what we've seen over the last several years that since our founding is that, we can't do it alone. As Idaho Policy Institute, we need to look to other experts on campus that might have a deeper level of understanding about different topics that our communities need to address. And so this Grand Challenge is a perfect fit for our work.
Thank you, Vanessa. And Deborah, would you mind giving an introduction of yourself and what role you play in the sustainability world?
Awesome. Great. I'm Deb LaSalle. I'm a partner with Warm Springs Consulting. I'm a co-founder. I come from a background of science and law. I worked at the Idaho National Lab, as well as the Hanford Lab, and then in environmental consulting for several years as an attorney. Also did some leadership development in there, and have teamed up with Amber Beek, who has her master's in business administration. And so we have a team here based in Boise of engineers, scientists, communication specialists, policy analysts, graphic designers, report writers. And I'm sure we all wear many hats inside there, and we're working with private companies, a lot of mining companies on sustainability issues. We're working with cities and counties. We're working with nonprofits. So we'll get into a lot of what that type of sustainability looks like, but we're particularly in Idaho looking for how do we leverage sustainability for a strategic advantage or profit advantage? How are we reducing costs for companies? How are we helping them attract investors? Or with cities and counties, how do we support them with better planning? We do a lot of interviewing. I know that we've worked with the Idaho Policy Institute with BSU to do some of that. So We've got lots happening. There's a lot on our website and our projects, warmspringsconsulting.com, and you can kind of get a sense of the breadth of sustainability we're doing, and it's very interdisciplinary. So
thank you, Deb, and thank you for being our community voice in this panel today. We so appreciate it. All right, so the first thing I wanted to jump into, I mean, you kind of talked about this already, but I think it'd be helpful to talk a little bit more about how you, or sorry, I'm jumping around my questions here. How do the organizations you represent view and or work within the space of sustainability? So I'm going to start with Vanessa on this one, and then we'll go to Britt.
Definitely. So I gave you kind of a way of how Idaho Policy Institute works. So we're issue agnostic. So we don't focus on any specific issue. We really are responsive to communities' needs. And, you know, as Warm Springs Consulting has seen, we're seeing more and more needs in relation to the sustainability space, right? And we can think about how that looks, whether it's like local food systems or overall climate variability, whatever it might be. And like, for instance, recently we helped the city of Boise with their energy plan. And so we did a survey, and that was responsive to the needs that the community member had. So that's kind of how we work in the space of sustainability. It's not our sole focus. We work in all sorts of sectors, but as Brittany mentioned, it's kind of all connected to sustainability in one way, shape, or form. And so as the community needs more of that research, we'll be available to work with them and, of course, work with our partners across campus.
Thank you, Vanessa. Britt, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the director for the Boise State Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute. And Carson shared our definition of resilience a little bit ago, community resilience, the one that we've adopted. And again, it really looks at not only those adverse events that can impact a community and a community's ability to prepare for, respond, and recover from those events, but it also looks at those underlying stresses within a community. We also look at the underlying stresses within a community that weaken the fabric of a community over time. So things like housing issues or poverty, lack of access to livable wages and jobs, climate change, things like that. And so when I think about, as a Resilience Institute, how we are merging with the idea of sustainability, it really goes to those stresses, because when you're looking at those stresses, those are really well aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so we work with communities, we do resilience assessments and resilience strategies, we develop tools with and for communities for decision making and evaluate those tools. And everything we do is really holistic, not only looking at the intersection of the natural environment and built environment, but also other components of their community like economy and society, health and well-being, and leadership and strategy.
Thanks, Britt. Deb, how does Warm Springs Consulting work within the space of sustainability beyond what you've already talked about?
Yeah, I'll focus this response on what we do for business because we align with how we're supporting community as in the way that Vanessa and Brittany articulated. In particular for business, we are looking at a 4 bottom line approach. The traditional, or in the last several decades, approach is profit. That's your bottom line, right? So we're looking at profit, people, purpose also, and then planet, of course. So, and this is how a lot of sustainability reporting is going for business, is you can't have that profit unless the underlying social structure, the people are well taken care of, and the underlying natural resources, the planet is taken care of. At any point where those collapse, you don't have the structure that's supporting your profit. And then of course, with purpose, more and more people are taking a stand and saying, I want my values aligned through the work I do. And they're no longer willing to, I'll go to work and do this, and then to fulfill my values, I'm going to do community service, I'm going to volunteer. They want it in their work too. So it also aligns with business, because what they find is when you have people aligned with their purpose, they're inspired. And when we're inspired, we're willing to do about anything. And so our engagement, our energy, our creativity just flourishes in that space. And employers benefit because they have more engaged employees, more creative, more inspired, and long-term and loyal to that company because they're aligned with its purpose. And then I'll just say one more thing with respect to profit in the business and sustainability. We're really looking at several factors really there. It's how do we reduce expenses, right? Because reduce costs, that increases profit. How do we minimize risk for the company? So if they're taking care of their social network, say it's a mine, and we do work for mines, but they're taking care of their environment and the people around them, that mining company is going to have less legal lawsuits against them possibly, or they're going to gain some social license there. And again, making the company attractive to investors. A lot of people, again, have taken a stand and said, I'm only going to invest in companies that are ESG, environmental, social governance companies. And so when people do that, their 401ks that are in IRAs, those investments are now impacting what's happening tremendously across America right now, because companies are coming to us and saying, we're not getting funding for the projects we want to do, whether it's a property management company or it's a mine. They are needing to show that they are moving in the direction of sustainability, that they are making goals and making headway that way. And they're not getting the funding they need if they're not doing it.
Thank you. And I think that speaks to this idea of sustainability being so multifaceted. I think all of your responses, touched on all these different aspects of sustainability, whether it's your workforce itself or the outcomes of your projects or whatever you're doing. So I think this panel series is going to be really interesting to see what sustainability means in all of these different environments and spaces. So I'm looking forward to that. Since today we're really focusing on this grand challenge, I would love to hear this one specifically for Vanessa and Brittany, but how do you envision the grand challenge will enable a more connected transdisciplinary research ecosystem at Boise State? So we'll start with Vanessa.
All right, thanks, Carson. Great question. I think that's something that we are trying to achieve right now, is making that determination, right? How do we break down any potential barriers that are in place that don't allow myself and Brittany or myself and another colleague across campus to connect, that don't allow a student in business and economics to come take a class in the School of the Environment or in the School of Public Service, right? How do we make sure that we're breaking down those silos and really allow us to have this transdisciplinary connection? So I think that's one point of how we're tackling it right now. And I can tag Brittany for more of that.
Yeah, and I think just echoing what Vanessa said and kind of what I talked about a little bit earlier is really understanding what that landscape is and being able to draw out what our strengths are at Boise State and how we complement the strengths of our other academic institutions in Idaho, University of Idaho, Idaho State, CWI, Lewis and Clark, right? So there's lots of institutes across Idaho that have strengths. So definitely if I'm thinking about our vision for success, really being able to identify those, find ways to better connect them, reduce redundancies, address barriers to engaging in this kind of work. For example, as a faculty member, we wear a lot of hats, right? We do research, we teach, some of us have really high teaching loads, we have service, and we see a request for proposals that comes out, and it's got a 30-day turnaround, and it's asking for multidisciplinary projects, right? So maybe I have an idea, but do I have the time, given my workload, to build out the idea, find a multidisciplinary team, build those relationships, collaboratively develop the project, and write the proposal? So those are the types of things that we'll be looking at, is how do we think about when there is an opportunity for funding, or maybe we just plan out there's always going to be opportunities for funding and they're always going to have short turnaround. So how can we foster an environment where that kind of work is happening in the background to be ready to respond to funding opportunities, for example? And just to follow on that as well, how do we communicate what we are doing with our community practitioners locally and across Idaho and even beyond Idaho, so that you all know what our strengths are and who to contact when there is something that comes up that you're like, I really need an intern to work on this. I wonder who at Boise State I should talk to. It should become clear at the end of our process.
And I know you didn't call on me, but could I add on why this is so important?
Yeah.
So we're only 6 years old as a company. We have decades of experience, but we came together and formed this company April of 2017. So we have hired 4 Boise State interns in those 6 years. That's quite a few, I would say. 2 are on staff with us now. 1 is now working for a company as a sustainability analyst, and the other one is in Seattle doing sustainability work. For this interdisciplinary study and cross collaboration that you're talking about is vital, because we have to wear so many hats in our firm, and we need our interns to have all these interdisciplinary skills, like really good writing skills, amazing analytical skills, very good communication skills, even an eye for graphics. Even if they're an engineer, it's helpful because we need to communicate these complex ideas and analytics in visuals that are easy to understand. And so we're doing a lot of charts and line graphs, but we're also sometimes like developing images that show a process, or how do you hook up a battery energy system that's in the back of a truck and mobile to a city for backup, like just new innovative ideas. And people really need to see what that looks like if they haven't seen it before. So presentation skills and the ability to navigate strategically politics. So having this kind of interdisciplinary, having more conferences, having your students out there more in the world where they're learning about Idaho politics and what people truly need in our state and where people get rubbed wrong. I just think that's priceless for these students to go out and then work in these, for the workforce. It's really invaluable to us, and it's needed for the work we do.
Thank you so much for adding that comment, Deb. That's great. And I think a conversation that we've all been having too of these students needing this more interdisciplinary knowledge anyways, because that's what the landscape is like when you actually get into the work. Vanessa, did you have something you wanted to add? I thought I saw you.
I just wanted to make sure, since we do have quite a few members from the community, sometimes interdisciplinary might mean different things to different people. And when we're thinking about this, it's not just the disciplines that we're teaching and studying on campus, it's all units on campus. And so I know Mike Stefanik is here from Service Learning. I think that, we've got people from the Sustainability Governance Council on with us, right? So it's not just the academic units, it's kind of all units on campus. And so we want to really figure out how to work with those that are successful already with external partnerships. Like, again, Service Learning, they know what they're doing. How can we learn from them and partner with them to connect in an even deeper way with our community members and their needs?
Yes, thank you so much. Any other comments anyone else wanted to share on that note? That's great. Okay. All right, the next question, and I think this is a really good one for this audience. I know we have a lot of Boise State folks on, but we also have people who are community members. So what do you see as the role or importance of developing community partnerships and collaborations with respect to the Resource Nexus for Sustainability Grand Challenge? We'll go ahead and maybe start with Britt this time.
So I think that through the work that the Idaho Policy Institute does, and the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute, and Center for Advanced Energy Studies, and School of the Environment, I mean, we've got a lot of folks that are working really hard to build relationships with our community. And I think that's where we have to start, is just building relationships and getting to know each other, understanding what folks in the community are doing and working on, helping community partners establish relationships with new community partners so that there are opportunities to learn from each other. So to answer the question, which I had to pull up, what is the role or importance of developing community partnerships? I think it's that, this, especially with these grand challenges, with these societal grand challenges, be it public health or sustainability or resilience, we have to be working together. We have to be understanding and bringing in the knowledge of the folks that are boots on the ground and working in this space every day, that what they're achieving, where their successes are, what they're struggling with. And until we really understand that, you know, the work that we do at the university is just going to be limited, right? So I think that what I would like to see is that we are working with community partners on all of these relevant, societally relevant projects at the inception of the idea. I have an idea. I think it might be interesting to look at evacuation routes for wildfire. I'm going to call up Jerry McAdams, the wildfire mitigation specialist, and run my idea by him. I mean, it should be the first thing that researchers think is who in the community would be interested in this and could help me build it out so that we can effectively do the science, advance the science, but translate the science into something that's relevant and useful for our communities. And vice versa as well. Like if there's a new project that a community partner or a problem that a community partner or potential community partner is struggling through, they will know who we are, and they will know that, you know, I've got this issue in environmental economics. They might contact me at Boise State. I'm not an economist, but I can connect them with the folks in economics to try to help build out those partnerships and relationships. So it's kind of a two-way street there. And I think that, again, if we're not doing that, if we're not working with our community at the inception of ideas, then we're missing a major opportunity to make societal advances.
Thanks, Britt. Vanessa, do you want to jump in?
Sure, that was Brittany covered a lot of really good points of it. I do think it's that, again, the School of Public Service, we have public service in the name of our school. Like that's what we were founded to do. And that's what Idaho Policy Institute was founded to do, is to create those strong community partnerships. It's hard for me to we don't do anything that's not responsive to communities at Idaho Policy Institute. Every once in a while, we'll take something a little bit further. But for the most part, we're really responsive to our community partners in really small jurisdictions or in the governor's office, right? Depending on what the research needs are. And so what my hope is for the Institute is it does allow us, like one of the challenges we had is how do we engage students and tenure track faculty in these quick turnaround research projects that are applied, but then also may result in a peer reviewed publication. Like how do we actually find the people that we can connect with that have that deep level of expertise? And like, for instance, we did a project on small modular nuclear reactors, the economic impact of them in Idaho Falls. And I was like, oh, not a nuclear economist, but I know someone, right? And, you know, so we brought in Jeff Black, and he was excellent and really helped us be able to take that project to a much deeper level than we could do on our own, even if we know how to run economic models. So I just think it's just it's like in the fabric of how we were created at Idaho Policy Institute. So it's so exciting for me to see such a large initiative take place where it's going to help us do that even more across campus.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you. And then Deb, I know you said you've worked with Idaho Policy Institute previously and worked with groups on campus. So can you talk a little bit about what you see as the importance of developing relationships between the university and community partners?
I see it as vital. I'll give the example of what we got to do with the Idaho Policy Institute. Teton County is located in Idaho. It's on the west side of the Tetons, beautiful, pristine area. I actually grew up near there. And they've had a high influx in river use with massive wedding parties going on this really pristine river with duckies and floaties, which I'm sure is just a ton of fun. But there's a ton of wildlife that live along this riparian area and are in the river. And so people would get backed up, and then of course people would get rowdy and some would break through, and it was becoming a health issue because there are moose that can occasionally be in there. So they wanted to develop some policy. And then in the political climate in the last few years, not just come in and have policy, right? Like, how do we have community buy-in and really have the community help create the kind of policy that will help manage the use of this river? And so we worked with Idaho Policy Institute. They did a lot of the research in looking at what research and surveys have been done and summarizing that for us, looking at policies that are in place for other similar river communities, not just in Idaho, but in other states, and also looking at coming up with, well, what criteria can we have the community utilize to evaluate these policies? And then we designed workshops and presented this information in a very simple way and had breakout sessions. And it took 2 workshops. And by the end, the county was very pleased on how aligned the community actually came to be in the, like, these policies make sense, implement them in this order. And then we were able to draft the policy, have a lawyer review it, and serve that community very well. And so I'd love to see that replicated throughout the state, offered, but we do need opportunities for where do we share that case study, right? And how do we, how do y'all sort of tout your horn of this is what we've done and this is what we do?
You're muted, Carson.
Muted. Yeah. Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Deb, for that example. We have about 5 more minutes before we open it up to audience questions. And I guess one question I thought might be interesting just to spend a couple minutes on are, why is this grand challenge needed? Like, what are some of the barriers that exist right now that we're hoping to really work through? And I think we've touched on a lot of that already, but maybe just what are some of the issues that we're really trying to tackle here at the university and then beyond? And whoever wants to take that one.
Well, actually, this language comes from our co-lead, Lance Davison, who's a community partner. And when we're like thinking about how we articulate all of this, he basically just says, what you're trying to do is create the time and space for people to do great things. So I'm gonna answer that with Lance's language.
I love that. That's great. Nessa, do you have anything to add or?
Well, I think we're still at this stage where we're trying to discover, like, so Britt mentioned that we're going to do that SWOT analysis. That's really going to help us figure out what, like, we might have perceptions of what the barriers are, but maybe those aren't real. Maybe those actually aren't barriers. Maybe they're easy to shift. But the asset mapping team and the benchmarking team, the community engagement team will be working together to develop that SWOT analysis and get feedback from stakeholders on it. And so I think that'll help answer kind of that question that you said, like, what are those barriers? Like, I don't really know. For some reason, we aren't doing it as well as we can, I think, right? I think we can do it better, this transdisciplinary work and working with communities. I think we can do it better, but it's the how piece that we're not really sure. What are those pieces what are those levers we need to shift just a little bit or a lot to make it to allow us to be more responsive, to allow us to have more engagement, to be able to turn around proposals in a way that is mindful and responsive and quick in some cases.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the things that I think even in these early conversations about it, we've been discovering is just how much excellent work there is already happening. And so just even understanding what work is going on and having a sense of that landscape is going to help us move forward into the next phase. So, yeah. Deb, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I would just add, we also had we don't have a full idea, of all the capabilities at BSU. And I have been a traditional nose to the grindstone person working in law or working in environmental consulting when a lot of that work was cookie cutter procedural. It's very clear what needs to happen. A lot of this sustainability work, there's no cookie cutter. So it does require finding out who's got expertise where, who you can collaborate with, and then working with your community and in a much more, I want to, we use a lot of human-centered design, but you're doing an iterative process where it's emerging what the solution is because we don't know. And so I think having a growth mindset coming into that, but I'd love to see the university and maybe you are already, because I'm also, often nose to the grindstone, but at a lot of the conferences that the industry groups are already putting on, coming to like the Ag Expo or the Ag Talks, right? And showing up there and maybe presenting a case study. I think that would be fabulous. I think co-writing books with members of the community and partnering with the private sector, I think that would be fabulous. Report studies and hosting some conferences, on site, like the Idaho Climate Summit was held at BSU in 2017. So building off that, and having a follow-up to that would be fabulous. And then applied research projects, like we're doing a lot with carbon sequestration, and turns out that a lot of rangeland that we have in Idaho could qualify in the involuntary carbon market. I'll try to simplify that a little bit. There's money available for ranchers if they do certain applications to their rangelands that help sequester carbon, make the soil healthier. It'll help things for decades. We need pilot studies done, research, like how does that work in Idaho? There's research elsewhere, but how does it work in our temperate climate? So we would love to see those types of studies and to partner with the university on those type of applied research projects.
Thank you, Deb. I love all of those examples and ideas, and I'm on board. Let's do it. All right, so I'm going to open it up to the audience. I don't see any questions yet in the chat. We did have a couple questions that were submitted when people registered. So I'm going to start with those, but if folks who are here right now have some questions, feel free to add those to the chat. Or if you want, you can raise your hand and we can keep this pretty casual. So let me decide which question we want to look at. Let's see. Okay, so this is related to a lot of what we've already been talking about, but what do you see as the process for Boise State engaging with local government to focus research and support application of findings to achieve outcomes? So specifically relating to government. And this is probably for either Britt or Vanessa. Vanessa, maybe to you, because IPI already is doing a lot of that kind of work.
Yeah, so we say that one more time so I can make sure I answer it right.
So how will you engage or collaborate with local government to focus research and support application of findings to achieve outcomes?
Yeah, that's kind of what we do right now. And so one of the things that we do too, though, and I think it'll be interesting how the team approaches this, but at Idaho Policy Institute, we don't make recommendations. We supply research, right? So we really believe in empowering decision makers in the community, whether elected officials or otherwise, to make their own decisions. They're in those positions of leadership to be able to do so. And so the hope is that they have more evidence, right? So if they want to create a new energy plan, they've got that piece of information that's going to help them shift that plan to help them achieve their long-term outcomes, right? Or if it's a nonprofit and they're looking at doing some sort of better service delivery, how do we help inform their ways that are done? It's done well in other places, kind of like the policy analysis that Deb was talking about that we did over in Teton County. Well, let's look to other places that have done things really well. How can we help our jurisdiction see that? And I do think this is kind of goes back to an earlier question is how are we going to engage with community members? In Idaho, we have so many communities that are so small and have such little capacity. I think there's a good opportunity for us at the university writ large to really help fill some of those gaps, right? So it could be policy analysis, it could be program evaluation, and help them have those tools, or working with service learning more in depth, right? To have some support in the work that they're doing.
Thanks, Vanessa. That's great. Let's see. Okay.
Can I add? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I just put a link in the chat to our City of Kamei resilience assessment and strategy. So I guess that's one way that the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute has been engaging with governments, in this case, a smaller city. And the Idaho Office of Emergency Management had been working with the community on flood mitigation and the FEMA grants and things like that, and introduced us to the community. And so that's kind of how we started to work with them, but we just recognized in working with them and learning about who they are and their values and really understanding that, we need to understand and respect their values and work within their constraints. It takes a lot of effort just to have a lot of conversations about that and start there as a place of understanding. And then help them recognize ways that they could be more proactive in their community. So especially with these smaller rural communities, they often, just because of the nature of the amount of people they have working in the city, or the types of things that they struggle with on a daily basis, they tend to be more in a reactive mode. So in working with them through a resilience assessment, we've helped to identify some of their biggest pains, some of their areas of most opportunity for building resilience. And then to continue that, we helped them kickstart some of those projects by tying students to the project to help the city get them started. And we asked, do you want, we've got a new PhD student that has an expertise in GIS and spatial analysis. You said you wanted an infrastructure asset map and upgrade plan. Would you like her to work with you on that? Yes. You say you kind of want to look at your tax revenue and look at potential deficits in your community. Would you like us to find an economics student to help you with that? Yes. And so those are ways that we're starting that conversation and helping to add capacity to communities to be able to get them past to that next step of implementation beyond the assessment itself and looking at where their strengths are and where some of their opportunities for building resilience are.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, for those examples. Okay, we have a question from Mike Stefancic. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So he asks, one team is focused on asset mapping on campus, but will there also be asset mapping done in our community to know what the community is already doing and how we might work to support them to continue the good work?
I can start that and then maybe Brittany can bounce off of it. So we did ask this question at the beginning of the asset mapping work, and we're specifically tasked with research, right? This is kind of this to stimulate this transdisciplinary research. And so we decided to initially look at the research efforts that are going on campus. And so that's kind of what we're looking at now and trying to figure out how to find that information. So I won't get into the like nerdy data collection things that we're doing right now, but looking at the resources we already have, where we're collecting data to engage with that secondary data before we go to our faculty and staff and be like, hey, what are you doing as far as sustainability research? So, and maybe Brittany can talk about the community side of things, how we're thinking about assets in the community.
Yeah, sure. And a part of it is the timeline limitations. So I think it's a great idea to also try to do some sort of asset mapping in the community, but with the time we have, we probably aren't going to be able to do it in this phase one, but it could be an opportunity, right? So this might be an outcome. So these comments are really useful for us, and we're hoping to, as we continue to engage the university and our community partners, hear these types of things, because this helps our team say, okay, well, we weren't able to do that as part of our phase one, but this is probably going to be pretty important in phase two. So that's something that we might consider doing in the future is looking at what's happening in our community. And I think we can kind of start to do it a little bit through this panel series, because again, Carson, our community engagement coordinator, reached out to you to say, what issues do you want to hear about or bring to the table? And then we designed the panel series around those. So even just through our panel series, we can kind of start to get an idea of the landscape of Idaho and our community partners and what you're working on. So that's a place where we can kind of start and think about, if we are going to try to do some sort of asset mapping with the community, how are we defining assets? How are we going to tackle that? And is this something that we need to inform our approach as we move forward with this grand challenge? Thanks.
Awesome. This one is maybe more, it's a question, but also kind of an interesting idea. So S. Schultz, I think this was direct message to me, but it says, do you have a primary website that local government staff could go to ask for assistance on topics? So maybe like how are people, if we're talking about wanting communities to think of us and contact us, how do they even do that?
Right now across campus, it's variable. I know Brian Wampler is on here somewhere. I think I saw him, and he is a newly appointed to a position in the president's office. That's going to help us do this better. I don't know if it'll be kind of a one front door approach, but like at Idaho Policy Institute, we have a place where community members, if they find IPI, they can go in and request a consult, basically, right, is how we do it. And same with students, if they're interested in engaging with us, there's a kind of a, or mostly people just call me or email me and I get on the phone and I talk with them, but there's that portal. And it's so much through the relationships we built, right? I think that's what's happening now. But what about those people on campus that haven't had that opportunity to build those relationships that are amazing resources? How do we make that connection happen? And I think Dr. Wampler's work in the president's office is going to really help us think through that. How do we do that community engagement piece better like not just in the resource Nexus for sustainability, but across all units on campus. Brian, hope that wasn't too much pressure on you, but I have a lot of faith in your work.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Vanessa. Anyone else want to add to that?
Ms. Sam, we have the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute has a website, and most people reach out to us through there, find my email address or the HCRI email address and reach out to us directly. But it would be nice to have something broader, I think, and so maybe that could be something we consider as an opportunity that we consider for phase 2.
Awesome. Thanks, Britt. All right, I see one other question here. So from Lynn Barker, they say, one of our most significant challenges for achieving local clean energy and climate goals are state policies and laws that preempt local government from implementing policies that support high impact clean energy and carbon reduction strategies. The state policies and laws may also impact local government's ability to fully take advantage of infrastructure investment funding and inflation reduction funding. Are there any plans to address this barrier?
I suspect this is a tricky one for you all because you're funded by the legislature.
Well, yeah, you want to start, Deb, and I can build off of how I would tackle that.
I just want to ease it up for you because it's a tricky one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so part of it, let's say a local jurisdiction came to us and they're like, gosh, we're really struggling with how to do this. How do we access this funding, or how do we do this? What we would do is take a step back and see, what are the barriers that are in place? What are the opportunities? And then kind of empower them to move forward with it. But what Idaho Policy Institute won't do is try to change policy, right? That is fundamentally not what we do. We again leave that to the decision makers, and we think it's really important for those decision makers to engage directly, whether it's the state level or the federal level, right? But there are some tools sometimes, access to funding and finding matching funds. It's really difficult. So actually after this call, I'm meeting with someone from Federal Highway Administration to talk about an infrastructure bank and how do we do innovative financing options to allow small jurisdictions the capital for match they need in order to do larger scale infrastructure projects, right? So what are those creative things that we can do? What are those problem solving pieces that are in place?
Nice response, Vanessa. Good job. All right, so one other question, and this would probably be it because we only have a couple minutes. So this is from Lawrence Shapiro, sorry. I'm a career changer starting in the master's program in social work at Boise State. I'm learning the level of rigor and engagement part of this interdisciplinary field. I'm wondering if social workers have found a place in this network. So maybe Britt, do you want to take that one? Or Vanessa, if you had something ready.
Well, I was going to say our housing opportunities for all VIP, we have social work students in that now. So although that VIP is 2 faculty members in the School of Public Service, we were really mindful about making that a interdisciplinary opportunity for students. And the VIP program, and I won't get into what it is, but it really does support students be able to kind of cross over into different disciplines. And now Britt has one of those as well. But sometimes people are like, what's housing and social work have to do with one another? But a lot, right? There's actually a lot of connectivity there.
Yeah. Right. So I think the same as Vanessa, we also have a Building Resilient Communities VIP that's open to students from any discipline. And so that's an entry point for really anybody that's interested in engaging in this kind of grand challenge work. And I'm also interested to learn a little bit from you too, Lawrence, is what are some ways that you think you could see yourself engaging, considering where you are in your program? And certainly social work there's a big component of sustainability that benefits from social work. And the next grand challenge is Healthy Idaho. And so there's going to be opportunities there as well. So I think, feel free to email us if you'd like to have a conversation about that. I'd like to learn a little bit more about what's driving that question and how you would like to engage with us.
And I see it as vital, right? People are only going to take care of the planet as good as they take care of themselves. And until that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, until the core needs are met, and in some of these rural communities where it's survival, there's no thought of beyond me, myself, my family, maybe my community, right? But that's sort of not right or wrong, that's just where people live and honestly should be living when they're in survival mode. So doing that social work with people, having people be more resilient and thriving human beings that can be creative and thoughtful. And, I just think that's vital and such a need everywhere. Yeah.
Thanks, Deb. All right, well, we are at 1 o'clock, so I want to be cognizant of everyone's time and thank you to all the panelists here today for your great responses and for telling us more about this grand challenge and how we're going to be approaching it these next couple of months. As Brittany said at the beginning, we will be having monthly panels that are diving into these topics more, so feel free to join our mailing list or just head to our website if you want to see when those events get posted. So thank you all for coming and have a lovely rest of your week.
Thank you, Carson.
Thank you.